بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين وبعد. So alhamdulillah, we have been given the opportunity to continue to read from the 62 discourses of Sayyid al-Hasani al-Husayni al-Din al-Qadir al-Jilani radiallahu anhu, and his work entitled Al-Fath al-Rabbani wal-Fayd al-Rahmani. So as we've mentioned throughout these sessions and these discourses, the Shaykh is trying to, via his discourses that he said to his students at the time, but as we know, that these words being an embodiment of the prophetic teachings of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and our belief that the Shaykh himself, Sayyid Abd al-Jilani, indeed also was one of the waratha, one of the inheritors of our Prophet ﷺ. So his very demeanor and his being and his akhlaq and his character and his mannerisms and so forth also are indicative of that prophetic legacy. So the main imperative of a sheikh, of a true sheikh, is to remove the veils between his or her students and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as we've mentioned several times, most of these veils are internal veils. They are ones that can be traced back to the caprice and the appetite and the whims and the illusions that most people somehow internalize within themselves. And so the world itself, in other words, al-Khalaiq, the creatures of the world themselves, they can be a source of guidance towards God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or they can be veils between us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So to see them as they truly are, one of the dua that we always say when we finish our session, اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to show us the haqq as it is, show us the reality as it is, and then allow us to follow it. وَأَرِنَا الْبَاطِلَ بَاطِلًا وَارْزُقْنَا اجْتِنَابَهُ. And also the batil, or falsehood, show us as it truly is, and give us the fortitude and the ability to avoid it, to abandon it. So oftentimes these internal veils, they manifest themselves inwardly and outwardly. So often what we say about others, and that's an external manifestation, is often or always precipitated by the thought itself that happens internally. And so the best method by which to counter these veils, these hujub, is to work on the internal aspect. So to get ourselves in a state of remembrance, of immersion in the mushahada, of the witnessing of the divine, so that those thoughts themselves don't really even come up. They don't really have power over us. And what did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say to Satan? إِنَّ عِبَادِي لَيْسَ لَكَ عَلَيْهِمْ سُلْطَانٌ. My ibad, those who follow me and who worship me and are truly sincere for my sake, لَيْسَ لَكَ عَلَيْهِمْ سُلْطَانٌ. You don't have sultan, you don't have power over them. So amongst those things that can happen sometimes is our perception of others, how we see others, and how we attribute maybe vile things to them, not because those people themselves are vile, but it's the vileness within ourselves, and then we see it reflected from within ourselves, and then we impose it upon others. And that's why we said al-mu'min mar'atul mu'min, the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, the believer is the mirror of his or her brother, or a mirror of the believer. So in the beginning of this discourse that we're going to read from some excerpts of it, the 14th one, we see that the Shaykh rebukes those who would backbite others and would speak ill of others, especially if they are people we consider to be min warathat al-anbiya, people we consider to be from the heirs of the prophets, or the metaphor. Would you like it to eat the dead flesh of your brother? And so the scholars after that they said lahm al-ulama masmum, that the flesh of the ulama, the true knowers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is not only dead if you're going to eat it and in a sense backbite them, but it's also masmum, it's poisonous. Reason, and then things end most of the time very, very badly for them. Not because of anything that those scholars or those awliya wanted or intended to happen to those people, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has taken Himself when He says, "Man adali waliyan faqad adantu bil harb." Man adali waliyan faqad adantu bil harb. Whoever hurts or reviles one of my awliya, waliyan, faqad adantu bil harb. Then I declare war upon him, or war upon her, war upon them. And one of the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has hidden from us is who are the awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who are the people of Allah, who are the ahlillah, who are the siddiqeen or salihin amongst us. Because that's a state, that's an eternal state of the heart, not something that's necessarily limited to the external performance of the deen or the external performance of ritual aspects of the deen. So if that is the case, then we don't really know who amongst us are the awliya. And if we don't really know who amongst us are the awliya, then we should treat every believer, every Muslim that we encounter as a wali, as a potential one. In the same manner that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has hidden the Salat al-Wusta from amongst the 5 prayers. So the middle prayer that's mentioned in the Quran, which one of the 5 prayers is the middle prayer? There's 5 different opinions. Some of them say the Maghrib, some of them say Isha, some of them say Fajr, and then some of them say Dhuhr, and some of them say Asr. So 5 different opinions. So then we treat every prayer like it's the middle prayer. We don't know which one of the nights in Ramadan, whether it's the last odd 10 nights or other nights than that, is Laylatul Qadr. Yes, there's some riwayat that indicate the 27th, but it's not an airtight, conclusive single opinion only. There's other opinions. Some of them even have the opinion that it rotates throughout the year, every year, not just limited to Ramadan. So we don't know which particular night is Laylatul Qadr, the night of power. So then the prudent thing to do would be to treat every night like it's Laylatul Qadr. So to offer something of a night prayer every night, and in that way you are certified and guaranteed that you will have at least one of the nights that you're praying that will be Laylatul Qadr. We don't know Sa'at al-Ijaba Yawm al-Jumu'ah. You don't know the exact time or moment or hour that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will fulfill the supplication, that which is asked in supplication on the day of Jumu'ah. So that means we treat all of the day of Jumu'ah as an opportunity for dua and so forth. So since Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by His wisdom has concealed these things within other things, then we treat as a general principle, as a general rule, we give all of those things what we call the hurma, the sanctity. So we sacralize, in a sense, our dealings with all people, because any one of them could be a wali of Allah. And we certainly don't want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to declare war upon us. We deal with all of the prayers as if they are the Salat al-Wusta, right? That has some sort of merit above with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, above the other prayers. We treat every night, at least in every night of Ramadan, potentially as Laylatul Qadr, because of the merit that has been given within Laylatul Qadr and so forth. So Shaykh here, if we're going to just pick out some excerpts. So he begins by saying, يا منافق طهر الله عز وجل الأرض منك ما يكفيك نفاقك حتى تغتاب العلماء والأولياء والصالحين بأكل لحومهم أنت وإخوانك المنافقون مثلكم عن قريب يأكل الديدان ألسنتكم ولحومكم وتقطعكم وتمزقكم والأرض تضمكم فتسحتكم وتقلبكم. لا فلاح لمن لم يحسن ظنه بالله عز وجل وعباده الصالحين ويتواضع لهم، لما لا تتواضع لهم وهم الرؤساء والأمراء. من أنت بالإضافة إليهم؟ الحق عز وجل قد سلم الحل والربط إليهم، بهم تمطر السماء وتنبت الأرض، كل الخلق رعياتهم، كل واحد كالجبل لا تزعزع وتحركه رياح الآفات والمصائب، إلى آخر الكلام. So he begins with kind of a strong discourse, and he says, "O hypocrite!" Here again, when we say nifaq, this is nifaq al-a'mal or nifaq al-mu'amala, right? The nifaq or the hypocrisy of dealing with people or with our deeds, not the nifaq of creed, which would put someone outside of Islam. May Allah purify the earth of you. Your hypocrisy will not be satisfied until your backbiting of the ulama, the saints, the awliya, and the righteous, the salihun, amounts to actually devouring their flesh. You and your hypocritical brethren alike will very soon have worms devouring your tongues and your flesh as they dismember you and carve you into little pieces. The earth will embrace you, then crush you and transform you. There is no salvation or falah for one who does not think well of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his righteous servants and behave towards them with humble modesty. Why do you not approach them with humility when they are the ru'asa, the chiefs, and umara, leaders? Who are you in relation to them? The Lord of Truth has entrusted to them the authority to untie and to bind, al-halli wal-rabt. Because of them the rain falls from the sky and the earth produces crops. All creatures are their subjects, their ra'iyya, or I would say not their subjects, but their flock. Each of them is like a mountain that is neither shaken nor moved by the winds of disasters and calamities. They do not budge from their places of their affirmation of Tawheed, oneness, and their contentment, rida, with their Master, Allah Azza wa Jal, to go off seeking for themselves and for others. So, backbiting itself, as a bunch of enormity as it is, begins with a feeling or a aspersion in the heart. So before one actually says something and makes kind of a offhand comment about someone else, it begins with a feeling in the heart. Where does that feeling in the heart come from? Where does it come about? It is a nafsani thing. Nafsani means it satiates the ego. So just like appetite can be physical, we can desire certain things to eat. It can also be, in this sense, emotional or even intellectual. So we can have an appetite for us to feel better about ourselves, right? The ego likes to be inflated. It likes to be stroked. It likes to be aggrandized. And one of the ways it can accomplish that is by denigrating other people. By putting other people down, it makes you feel up. And modern psychology and so forth has already affirmed this. That's what people do. So sometimes people would rather feel that they're just better than everybody else than them to have been given some sort of, or to achieve some sort of big accomplishment. It's enough that they're better than their peers. So I believe in one study, they asked people, would you rather double your salary or everyone else have half of yours, make half your salary? And I think the overall response is everyone else to make half your salary, in relation to you. So this is kind of the human nature. What gets really despicable about it is under the guise of, or the pretext of deen, or the pretext of al-amr bil-ma'ruf wa nahy anil munkar, to enjoin the good and forbid the wrong, we say we have to call these people out. So we are very much in the throes of what's called the call-out culture or the cancel culture. So people feel they have to point out other people's mistakes and then expose them so that they can be canceled, and that no one will, if they're a business owner, so no one may patronize their business anymore. If they're a teacher or a scholar, that no one will listen to them anymore, and that they will be declared irrelevant after that. And those are some of the words I've heard some of these people use. So The problem with that is not the external acting of itself, but what drives that? Why do we want to do that? Are we really seeking justice? Are we really seeking to, if there are victims involved, are we really seeking to alleviate their condition? Or does it come from something that's a little bit grayer and a little bit more malevolent within ourselves, which is our nufus, our egos, and we have this appetite to put others down and to cancel them, maybe because they disagree with us or they do not subscribe to the same political leanings that we do, or for whatever reason. And as a result, then this makes us want to kind of stick it to them and wait for the opportunity, if it presents itself, to find fault with them. And really, the ethos of Islam is quite the opposite. If we see an inkling of fault with somebody, right, what we would say, something that can be interpreted in a very negative way, or something that we can find a plausible reason for, why that particular behavior is being exhibited, and still maintain a good opinion of that person, then we should always go with the latter. We should always go with the idea that people make mistakes, and even when they do make mistakes, perhaps the way that we're looking at them, the way that we're observing them, is erroneous. And so we should leave some space for that. We should leave some nasib, some health, some allotment for our own particular biases. So rather than jump on someone immediately because we feel like they've made this big mukhalafa, they've made this big transgression, we should have what's called ta'anni and tarayyuth. We have to be a little bit more careful and a little bit more deliberate before we put them on blast on Twitter or on Facebook or on Instagram, whatever people use, in order to kind of what they feel is to correct that particular wrong. And I'm not approaching it really based upon the context of this book, not from the greater social implications, because there are greater social implications. Once you blast somebody out on the internet, it's very hard to retract that. You've kind of ruined it for them, at least for the foreseeable future, if not beyond. But I'm looking at from the context of the person who actually does that. What type of effect is that going to have on your own spiritual cultivation, on your own tazkiyah? If you appoint yourself kind of as the ombudsman of everybody on Facebook or on the internet, or people who make mistakes, and then trying to expose those mistakes and to bring it to light, and saying things like sunshine is the best disinfectant, and that might be kalimatu haqq urida biha batil. It might be a sense of truth in that to be transparent and to bring things to light if there's mistakes being made. But oftentimes I see it as a pretext to humiliate and to really just character assassinate people. And perhaps the mistake that you're talking about, they did it actually, and they're guilty. But then what is should the punishment fit the crime? Do they deserve to be completely blasted and character assassinated and their reputation completely sullied forever because of a mistake that they made? Or maybe they had a moment of weakness in public, and someone got that on video, or someone put that out on YouTube, and then it went viral, and then people then tend to see that person in only that particular light. Whenever they do a search on their name on Google, then this particular incident comes up. So, as Muslims, we should be, really, really careful about that and how we go about doing things like this. And the Prophet ﷺ was very forgiving and very condoning, and he did not seek to always choose the worst path or the worst opinion about when things were presented to him. He had people who, what we would consider to be commit treason, but yet he forgave them. There was one Sahabi whose name escapes me, who knew that the Prophet ﷺ was about to embark and go into battle with them, and was about to head out to Mecca. And he was a client of one of the tribes in Mecca, so he didn't really have anyone who had his back, so to speak, from a tribal sense in Medina. So he just wanted to give them advanced warning because he thought that would carry favor with them. The Prophet ﷺ found out about this, via wahi, or I think it was brought to his attention. And then when the Sahaba came, the rest of the Sahaba thought that was treason, and that would, in most countries today, treason is a capital punishment. But the Prophet ﷺ didn't want to do that, and he forgave him, and he said, "This is a person who participated with us, I think, in Badr, and he loves Allah and His Prophet," and so he forgave him for this. So what we might think are completely, unforgivable crimes, we have to account for people's humanity, and people sometimes, in a point of weakness, their nufus can take them over. Imam al-Sha'rani, he has a couple of books where he talks about al-akhlaq. He has one called al-Akhlaq al-Mabtuliyya, and there's another other books of akhlaq, of character. And one of the ones that I recall that I think is a very beautiful one is when you encounter your fellow brother or sister or Muslim, something that you don't like from them, then look at that as that's the result of their shaitan, or the result of their nafs. So it's not that person themselves, right? Because everyone has a nafs, everyone has a shaitan, everyone has a qarin, and they're the ones who exerted influence over them. And just think about yourself, right? Whenever you're trying to make a decision about something, and maybe you thought it through and you sat down a little bit and you said, "Oh, subhanAllah, when I was thinking of that, I was in a passionate moment, I really wanted to stick to that person, but then after I sat down for a little bit, I kind of came to my senses." Sometimes people don't do that. Sometimes in the heat of the moment, they will do a particular action and maybe they'll regret it later, but the damage has been done. That doesn't mean necessarily that those people should be condemned for life and forever because they fell into that particular mistake. So this is especially true with those who we think have a standing with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we should be very, very careful about what we say about them, what we think about them. And this certainly goes true for those people who had a direct relationship with our Prophet ﷺ. So the Sahaba, the companions, we should never think anything ill about them whatsoever. The historical incidents that happened between them were that, and they happened, and it showed that they're also human, but we should not take one particular side over another. We believe that there was someone who was right and someone who was wrong, but this was a matter of ijtihad, a matter of exerting some sort of juristic reasoning to try to figure out the right thing to do. And one of them made a mistake, and the other one was the recipient of that mistake. But the Prophet ﷺ said in one of the akhbar, "Ashabi kan-nujum, bi-ayyihim iqtadaytum ihtadaytum." My companions are like the stars, whichever ones that you follow, you will be guided. And that also goes true for al-Bayt, the people of the household of the Prophet ﷺ. So even existing until now, if they are believers and they're Muslim and they have intisab and it's mazmoon or muhaqqaq, it's highly probable or certain that they are from al-Bayt. Even if they commit sins, even if they make mistakes, think about their relationship with our Prophet ﷺ. Would the Prophet ﷺ like us to disparage them or to condemn them or to deal with them in a harsh manner? So much in the same way, if like you have a close friend and they have children, and then the children of that close friend do something wrong, you'd want to correct them in a way that's gentle, that's latif, that's nice, not to jump on them like the children of your enemy and deal with them in the most harsh and austere way. So out of in deference for the Prophet ﷺ, that's the way we deal with Ahl Baytihi, the people of his household, those who have intisab either to al-Hasan or Hussein, and according to some opinions, those who are even related to al-Abbas or Bani Hashim, also and Bani Abdul Muttalib, like cousins and uncles of the Prophet ﷺ. So, and that goes also true for everyone who says La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. There's a hurma, right? This idea of hurma, of sacrosanctity, of inviolability, is very, very important, not just for the social implications, as I mentioned, but also for your own heart, right? The more that you carry around in your heart of contempt, of condemnation, of what's called ghil, right? One of the dua that we say, Allahumma la taj'al fi qulubina ghillan lilladhina amanu. This ghil means contempt and enmity, rancor, right? That you, and sometimes this comes out in the form of what's called a shamata. So shamata means you rejoice at the misfortune of the person who is the object of your shamata. the person who is the object of your ire. So you like to see bad things happen to them. And then you write things on Facebook like, oh, look, karma, they got what they deserve, and all those things. When this pandemic first came out, some Muslim commentators, said, "Oh, this is the Chinese are getting this because of what they did to the Uyghurs, and they're getting what's coming to them." And then when it spread to Europe, then they said, "Oh, well, see, look, they're getting what's coming to them because they were colonizers, and they controlled the Muslim lands for a long time, and so forth." And now that it's spread to the Muslim lands, what do we say? So, shouldn't we be ashamed of this? Is a kind of ta'alluh. We're saying what Allah is doing. We're giving a reason why Allah is doing the things that He does, like we're speaking on His behalf, Azza wa Jal. Who appointed you the spokesperson for God? Who assigned you the person to say, oh, I think God is doing this and Allah is doing that, and this is who's getting revenge on here, and this is getting revenge on here. So all of that is su adab. All that is very, very bad form, very, very bad etiquette with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Rather, we should say, this is something from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ya'ummul qul, everybody's being affected by it. There are lessons for us to be learned. There are ibar. It's not just happening to people who quote unquote deserve it or don't deserve it. The Quran instructs us, وَاتَّقُوا فِتْنَةً لَا تُصِيبَنَّ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا مِنْكُمْ خَاصَّةً, and have taqwa of the fitna, of the tribulation, that does not merely afflict the wrongdoers amongst you. It's not specific to them, but it will come to everyone. And we know the instruction of our Prophet ﷺ, كَانَ الطَّاعُونُ يُبْعَثُ عَلَى الْكَافِرِينَ عَذَابًا لَهُمْ. These type of awbi'ah, these type of plagues were sent before for disbelievers as a type of punishment for them. وَهُوَ رَحْمَةٌ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ. And it's a mercy for the believers, and whoever stays in his house or in his land, sabiran, and patient with it, then they'll have the ajr of the shaheed, مثل أجر الشهيد. They'll have the reward that's similar to the reward of the shaheed, of the one who dies fi sabilillah. That's our response. That's how we should look at it. This is how the akabir, this is how our teachers look at it. This is how they've interpreted. Anything else, especially when we're specifying a particular group and we're saying it's intiqam and it's revenge on a particular group, this is not coming from deen. This is coming from nafs. It's coming from the ego. Sometimes the ego, it's very treacherous, and it'll try to trick you, and it'll say, no, this is for the deen. And anta yani taghdab lillah, and you are being angry for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But if your anger is marked by enmity and rancor and hatred and shamata, right, rejoicing at the misfortune of others, then it's not from deen. It's not from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not something that's pure. It's something that's very dark, coming from your nafs. Wallahu a'lam. So I just want to read a couple more passages. Something very important that he says here. He says, عن بعضهم رحمة الله عليهم, towards the end. He says, رحمة الله تعالى عليه, this person, أنه قال عباد الله عز وجل الذين تحققت عبوديتهم له لا يطلبون منه دنيا وآخرة إنما يطلبون منه هو لا غيره اللهم اهدي جميع الخلق إلى بابك هذا أبدا سؤالي والأمر إليك هذا دعاء عام أثاب عليه والله عز وجل يفعل في خلقه ما يشاء إذا صح القلب امتلأ رحمة وشفقة على الخلق. So he says, I can't really find it, I'll just translate it. He said, the ibad of Allah, the worshippers of Allah, the servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the ones who have tahaqqaq of their ubudiyyah, right? Who have actualized and realized their ubudiyya, yani their servitude towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. لا يطلبون منه دنيا وآخرة ولا آخرة. They don't ask for dunya nor they ask for akhirah. They ask for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in the next discourse, which we'll get to, I think, the next time we meet, next session, Abu Yazid al-Bistami, very famous ascetic, he said, المؤمن العارف لا يطلب من الله عز وجل لا دنيا ولا آخرة إنما يطلب من مولاه مولاه. That the arif, the believer, doesn't ask from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala dunya or akhirah, but he asks from his master, his master. He asks from his master, his master. So we ask Allah for Allah. What does that mean? We ask Allah for Allah. So we don't seek that which is created, which is dunya and which is akhirah. Those are things Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala yatasarraf fihima kama yasha. Those are things that He contends with and He dispenses with as He wills, as He pleases. But we seek Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the best way to seek Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is to ask Allah to give us Allah, to give us Him, to have a greater understanding of Him. So he said, إذا صح القلب امتلأ رحمة وشفقة على الخلق. If the heart becomes pure and it becomes true and it becomes healthy, spirituality that is, then it will be filled with rahmah and shafaqa ala al-khalq. It will be filled with mercy and compassion for the khalq, for creation. And this to me is probably the most important discerning factor of those who, talk the talk but can't walk the walk. If your sheikh or your teacher is making you feel angry and making you feel enmity towards others and making you look at the faults of others and condemn them and despise them, especially if they're fellow believers, for the faults that they have, then, it may sound controversial, that person's not a sheikh, and anything other than that. But if the sheikh brings hearts together, because that is the occupation of al-Warith al-Muhammadi, the occupation of the one who is a true heir of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and now yu'allaf bayn al-qulub. There's ta'lif, there's reconciliation between the hearts. The Arabs prior to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam were the most disputative bunch you could have imagined. They fought over the most trivial of things in the Arabian Peninsula. And yet the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they were shafa hufratin min al-nar fa'anqadhakum minha, they were on the very rim of the pit of fire, literally and figuratively. The Prophet ﷺ brought them back from that and brought ta'lif, allafa bayna qulubihim. And the Quran says, if he spent all that was in the earth to bring this ta'lif, to bring them to reconcile, it would not have worked. So He made ta'lif al-qulub, not ta'lif al-abdan, not the reconciliation of bodies, but the reconciliation of hearts. Not the reconciliation of tribes, not the reconciliation of families, but the reconciliation of hearts. And the one who can do that must have mercy and compassion. He'll see the faults, or she'll see the faults of others and not look at them with what's called izdira, or belittling, or contempt, or hatred. And then that state then is transferred to their students, and then more karahiyah, then more hatred, and then more enmity and more rancor, and then infuse that, also add to that as well, this kind of feeling of self-righteousness and sanctimony and pretense that we're much better than that group or this group or the followers of this teacher or this sheikh, and we are the best and they don't know anything. And that sort of that dialogue, that discourse, this is, as we mentioned in some previous programs we did, this is a tadayun as-salbi, right? This is not a problem of the deen. It's not the teachings of the deen that are at fault, but the tadayyun, the way that people are practicing the deen, the way that they have taken on the deen. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ is narrating in Sahih Muslim. He said, أَخْوَفُ مَا أَخَافُ عَلَى أُمَّتِي مِنْ بَعْدِي الْأَئِمَّةُ الْمُضِلُّونَ. The thing that I fear the most, or from amongst the things I fear the most after me, in my ummah, in my community, are the misguiding imams. The misguiding. So they are misguided and they are misguiding. So the misguiding teachers, the misguiding imams, they are the problem. So how do we remedy that? We'll have it tadayun al-ijabi. We have to have a type of understanding of the deen and tadayyun that is positive. And that begins with taking the right teachers, with taking the right awliya, taking the right shuyukh. And one of the properties, one of the attributes that they'll have is that they have rahmah and shafaqa ala al-khalq. They have mercy and they have compassion for everybody because they wish to see their guidance, just like our Prophet ﷺ wished to see the guidance of all. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam wa a'lam, walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. And we'll stop here inshallah, and next time we'll do the 15th discourse.